Jimmy Butler met with Pat Riley last week to discuss his future in Miami. But what happened during the meeting and what's next for Butler and the Heat? We'll tell you on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. We have a great show for you today. Erik Spoelstra might be facing his toughest test yet as the head coach of the Miami Heat. Jimmy Butler may have come to a realization that we already knew around these parts, but David, the Jimmy Butler stuff does not stop. Here's what we learned on Tuesday. Jimmy Butler and Pat Riley met face-to-face, and Butler reiterated his desire to get traded. Jimmy told him that he will not sign a new contract with the Heat. He's willing to pick up his option for next season, but only to facilitate a trade. That the Heat have engaged with multiple teams in trade talks around Jimmy Butler, have received offers for Jimmy Butler, but none that they like. The Heat are also expecting Jimmy Butler to return to the team for Friday's game against the Nuggets. And owner Micky Arison plans to meet with Jimmy Butler on Friday, presumably before the game, and that the team will meet later this week to discuss options for how to handle Jimmy Butler for the rest of the season if he is not indeed traded. A lot to get to in today's episode, David. Yeah, a lot of stuff that, I think we kind of knew that was sort of reconfirmed on Tuesday and things like that. But what do you make of Jimmy's face-to-face with Pat Riley during this face-off?
Again, to reiterate, so much to kind of break down, and there's so many different nuanced levels that we could explore this in there. But the first thing I thought of when I heard this is that there's an element to this beyond just the money, because at least if I'm interpreting this correctly, it's that even had Pat Riley offered the extension or the contract that that Jimmy wanted, he wasn't going to accept it anyway. The bridge
during this face-to-face meeting.
During this face-to-face meeting, he's expressed that he does not want to play for the Miami Heat. So we had talked a lot about Jimmy's primary goal of requesting a trade was to get paid, and that's totally fine. But the report that came out today indicated that there were other elements that Jimmy might have been disenfranchised with regarding the team and the way that they didn't acquire said superstar. I thought those were not necessarily minimal. I just didn't think that they were as important a factor in Jimmy determining that he no longer wanted to play for the Heat. But between what Pat Riley said, between the friction between Erik Spoelstra, perhaps, likely, and Jimmy Butler, what Pat said in the last postseason press conference, and between the fact that that the Heat could not acquire another superstar to join Jimmy Butler in Miami, those factors all played a significant part in Jimmy not wanting to be here, aside from the money. The money is a factor, no doubt about it. But it seems like even had Pat Riley offered that money, there was much more beyond it and has weighed heavily on Jimmy and his decision to part ways with the team. So that was the first thing I took away from it, is that he's really upset with the way that the franchise has been run over the last couple seasons, and he's not happy with the lack of moves that they've made.
Most divorces occur because of finances. A lot of divorces happen because of money, right? And I think this divorce starts with that. I think we're right to read that, had maybe Pat Riley offered the extension in the summer when he also offered the extension to Bam Adebayo, this stuff isn't happening. I do agree with you that it does feel like now, even if now that Pat Riley offered the 2-year, $113 million max extension, that Jimmy would be like, here's two of my favorite fingers. See you later. And I think the part of that is because of the ego, because of all this sort of the additional, all this stuff that sort of festered and occurred between Pat Riley's comments and his end of season press conference and now. But again, going back to the divorce thing, it's like, I've never been divorced, but I'm trying to use this analogy. It's like you get divorced because of finances, and then all of a sudden you're fighting over the toaster. It's like, I never really cared about that toaster, but you're definitely not going to get that toaster, so I'm going to get that toaster. Now we're fighting over a toaster. And it feels like all this stuff is just toasters, right? Like you never got the superstar that I wanted. It's like, okay, this is coming out like, no, at the core issue here is the fact that the Heat did not offer Jimmy Butler that extension, and in not doing so, wounded him emotionally, insulted him to the point of no return. And a lot of and Pat Riley and the Heat front office and Jimmy Butler and his representation have done a lot of things since then that have basically made the situation worse. So the situation that started just about money has become a lot more of other things. But I guess ground zero for all of this was the money. But now all this stuff is sort of piled on top of it now to the point of, there's no fixing this thing anymore.
No, they cannot. It's irreparable. So you mentioned the fact that Micky Arison was meeting with him, Pat meeting with him face to face. Like, the team is going all out and trying to find some way of smoothing this process out, but it seems like Jimmy has dug his heels and he is wounded. It's a good point. Like, the money, as much as the money means something, there's an emotional factor tied to it. Like, it's not just the money. The money is representative of your commitment to me, and you're saying thank you for being a franchise great player over the last 5.5 seasons. And the fact that they didn't offer him that money has hurt him on an emotional level that I would not have expected. I thought there would be more give and take in terms of, what Jimmy and the front office could align with. Like, it could have been a more team friendly deal, if you want to look at it that way, but one that would pay him a lot of money. But obviously that's not the case. Like, it's just surprising to me.
I think Riley lit that option on fire when he called him out in his end of season press conference. It wasn't just that they didn't sign that they didn't offer the extension, but Riley used a public space to basically be like, we're not happy with you either, and here are the things that we're unhappy with. I don't think Riley handled that at all the right way, and I don't think either side handled this.
He can't help it.
He can't.
Riley, he cannot,
and neither can Jimmy. Right?
And
these are two stubborn, strong-willed individuals who got to the places they are because of their stubbornness and strong will. And what had been a happy marriage for a very long time, an organization that could house and even kind of treat Jimmy's interested character traits that kind of got him in trouble in previous stops. They treat those as a badge of honor in a lot of ways. Right. But even those things, there was just an end point here, clearly, when the money kind of started to get involved here. And when, Jimmy Butler obviously did not play up to standard last year and everything that happened there. But what do you make of this, like, Micky Arison planning to meet with Jimmy Butler? This, according to the Sun Sentinel's Ira Winderman on Friday. That's like an unprecedented move. Micky Arison is not Jerry Jones, right? This is not a guy who gets involved in the sports product very much. So the fact that he's meeting with Jimmy Butler, like, what do you think that's all about?
The doomsday clock is at 11:59, basically, and there's this breaking out the final last stop for Mickey to say, as the team governor, team owner, we love you here. We want to show you how much we appreciate you here, and we want to be able to write the final chapter of your career here in Miami because you have meant this much to the organization. Like, I have to think that they're going to reiterate everything that they said and offer him that deal and see if they can smooth things over, because those things do appeal.
Offer him what deal?
Like the deal he wants. The
extension?
Yeah. I think that's what they're going to do. I think that's what they're going to offer him, the final. Wow. I agree. But at the same time, it's like, why would an owner meet with a team? Like, this is because now we're facing backlash. We're seeing the team rather face backlash, and Pat Riley is that they keep pushing stars out. And, you see a number of players kind of side with the front office, et cetera. But I think they're learning their lesson to some extent from 2016 and how badly that was perceived around the league. It took a long time for them to kind of repair that public image and the image within basketball circles around the league.
Yep.
If you could do that to Dwayne, if you could force Dwayne out, and that's a player that you drafted and who in his third season carried you to a title, that's not a good look.
I think this is different, though, because we discussed this earlier this week. Like, there is not a lot of sympathy for Jimmy Butler's situation. Like, a lot of people around the league view Jimmy as having quit, as having kind of gone back on the contract that he's
retired players,
former players. But and I will tell you, within the, there are a lot of people in the NBA now that see it through that lens. Like Dwayne Wade played out his contract, and it kind of got frosty at the end there during the summer. But everybody expected Dwayne Wade to be back. It was a surprise when he wasn't. And when Pat Riley did mishandle it, he kind of mishandled it in a small window of time. Where this has just sort of been drawn out, and I think there's a lot of dirty laundry obviously being aired right now. I would be surprised if Micky Arison did that. I do wonder if this is just sort of a mediator type situation where, look, you obviously cannot meet with Pat Riley face to face. That did not help matters. That didn't work. You guys are both strong-willed, stubborn, hard-headed individuals. You guys don't need to be in a room together anymore. It's not Erik Spoelstra's place to do it because, as we're going to talk about, his job is already tough enough. So who else is left, right? It can't be like, it has to be Micky Arison. And maybe he says something to the effect of, look, we did have a weird sort of, our relationship with Dwayne was fractured. Our relationship with Shaquille O'Neal was bad when he left. And with each of those, like both of those guys have their jerseys in the rafters here. That is still possible maybe for you too. If that's something that you want, if we can all handle this better than we've handled it
in the past
so far. And again, that's my best guess as to what it is just a shrewd businessman, Micky Arison, trying to do shrewd business and step in and mediate here is what I imagine might be the message. And maybe also like, hey, here are our options. We've went to the league office. We've asked about all these things. Like this is we've done everything we can to try to appease you. These offers aren't out here. The trade that you want isn't materializing. This is what we got. Let's try to make the best of it. Maybe that's what it is. Or maybe he is going to be saying, you know what, screw it. Here's $113 million. Please make everything easier on us. What lies ahead could be the greatest test of Erik Spoelstra's coaching career. We'll talk about that next year on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Hungry Root. When it comes to grocery shopping and meal planning, it's a problem for a lot of people. Sometimes you just don't have the time. Between work, life, and trying to eat healthier, you're constantly feeling stressed out. I know it happened to me. I'd go to the grocery store, buy things I didn't need, and then end up with no time to actually cook. And sticking to health goals, well, that's a struggle too. But everything changed when I discovered Hungry Root, because honestly, it's been a game changer. It's the easiest way to eat healthy without all the stress. With Hungry Root, it's like having a personal shopper and a nutritionist all in one. They take care of my grocery shopping, recommending meals and groceries based on my taste and health goals, from anti-inflammatory to high protein and gluten-free options. And the best part, every meal is ready in 15 minutes or less. I'm talking quick, healthy meals that actually taste great, all delivered straight to my door. It's been a huge time saver and has made healthy eating so much simpler. You're going to love Hungry Root as much as I do. And for a limited time, you get 40% off your first box and a free item in every box for life. Just go to hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA. That's hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Code LockedOnNBA. You get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Code LockedOnNBA. Don't miss out. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team has a free daily newsletter. Introducing the Locked On Heat newsletter, one stop for ultimate Heat and league coverage with local analysis and amazing writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shear, and Locked On Fantasy Basketball tips from Josh Lloyd. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. Jimmy Butler is expected to return to the team on Friday. Him and his representation have said, yep, I will participate in Miami Heat basketball activities following the suspension. The Heat left coaches in Miami during the 6-game trip to work with Jimmy Butler at the team facility. All signs are pointing to Jimmy Butler, unless he's traded between now and Friday, which seems doubtful based on this reporting, to Jimmy Butler playing a game for the Miami Heat on Friday night against the Denver Nuggets. Regardless of what happens here, if he is really going to come back to the team, that's kind of where I want to go with this. I mean, how
he's going to be in uniform?
How does this look? How he will be in uniform? He will be wearing a Miami Heat jersey. How do you do this? How do you handle this if you're the team? I mean, you can't bench him. You can't do that.
Why not?
If you're Erik Spoelstra, you just keep him out of the starting lineup.
Out of the lineup, period. He doesn't see the floor. He wears a uniform. He goes out there and he gets DNP CDs for the rest of his time here until they figure this out. I know it costs the team.
I can't see him doing it. What would be the reason?
You're right. The reason why is because you have maintained all along since April or May, whenever Pat made those comments, that it's all about the players that are actually out on the floor and the respect that they've earned by being on the floor. And yes, Jimmy's serving a suspension that the team decided, but in reality, he also quit on the team before that. I just don't think that they can put him out there. Like, you go on the 6-game road trip, you're bonding, you're working hard for each other, you achieve some success, 3-2 at this point in time before the Lakers game on Wednesday. I don't know that you can just say, well, Jimmy's back, we got to take him back. He can't. That feels like a slap in the face of the other guys that have tried to make something out of this opportunity and that have shown some spirit, some togetherness, some team bonding. And Jimmy.
So what, you're gonna bring Jimmy back and he's just gonna sit on the bench and stare at them? What if they lose?
He's gonna sit next to Kevin Love. He's gonna sit next to. What does it matter? They lost against the Clippers. And then you've got.
I know, but Jimmy wasn't sitting there on the bench when they lost to the Clippers. Like, Jimmy's just gonna sit. If they
sitting on the bench when they
Friday
lost
against the Nuggets,
he was sitting on the bench when they lost to the Pacers. Like, he didn't play well. Like,
he did not play in that fourth quarter. Neither did Bam Adebayo. But I can't. I don't see that. I don't see Erik Spoelstra doing that. I don't see this organization doing that. He served the suspension. That was the punishment. When he comes back, the punishment theoretically is over. What you did, contract detrimental to the team, quitting on us in those 2 games prior to the suspension, that was the punishment for doing that. When you come back, I think if you're the Heat, you have to put him out there. I don't see how you not. I understand it. It's an impossible situation because now you got all this good stuff happening and you're trying to move forward, and now you're kind of giving the control of everything. You're ceding control back to Jimmy for him to go back to standing in the corner and doing what he was doing before, because who knows how he's going to act. We have no idea what his on-court temperament is going to be in this game. And that's why I kind of went here is I can't imagine. This might be the toughest challenge for Erik Spoelstra as a head coach of his career. This this and like the first year of the Big Three. I don't know that he's never dealt with something quite like this. Even James Harden, it wasn't like this. He kind of ruled himself out of games. Anthony Davis, towards the end of that Pelicans run, that was the end of the season. He got traded in the summer, but everybody kind of knew that that's all folks, T-shirt and all that kind of stuff. But he was sort of like intermittently available. But when he was out there, he was playing okay. Like, I don't know the last time we've seen anything quite like this before a trade deadline with so much of a runway left for the season. This is an impossible task for Erik Spoelstra. It is the greatest challenge of his coaching career thus far, is how he handles Jimmy Butler coming back here if he's not traded.
I see that point, and but I also see that there's at least a path forward here. And Spo, being who he is and the way he operates, he loves chaos because chaos forces change. And for him, I think he leans into that idea that we're not going to be operating as a team with Jimmy Butler. We're going to be operating as a team without Jimmy Butler. Just because he's sitting there doesn't make him part of this team. And so he can lean into the other players that are currently on the roster and get them to maximize their opportunities. I don't know that it's that difficult. Again, from the earlier point we were talking about, if you're the front office, why would you want Jimmy out there? Like, you don't think he's going to give 100%. You don't think he's going to actually contribute to winning. He might risk injury even further, lowering what already appears to be a non-existent trade market for him. I don't see any reason why he sees the floor. I don't know. I from Spo's perspective,
you're the Heat. You've been trying to paint Jimmy Butler as the bad guy this entire time, and I'm not saying that it's without reason either. I don't think either side handled this particularly well. Yeah, I think you have. I think you've basically been challenging Jimmy Butler to get to this point of asking of him kind of showing his behind here a little bit. And if this is sort of an opportunity for you to be like, look, if you bench him, you're at fault for benching him. Maybe we already saw how Erik Spoelstra approaches this. You play him, you see how engaged he is, and if he's not, you're not playing in the fourth quarter, and he can extend it. You're not even playing in the. You'll play Luke Babbitt minutes to start the third quarter, and then you're going to get benched after the 5-minute mark. And maybe that's.
What if he gets hurt though? Isn't that a risk he can't afford to take?
It's 100% a risk. You're absolutely right. That would be the fear, I suppose. It would be something like that. I just don't see how you could. I don't see how you could just not play him. I don't see Erik Spoelstra doing it. I don't see the Heat doing that. I think they're going to try to get him to buy in and say, hey, let's increase your trade value here, despite the risk of injury. I do wonder if you just benched him, a star player, like would that invite the NBA Player Association to get involved? Right? They say, hey, same thing I just said. You already suspended him. He served his punishment. What reason do you have for him not to play? I think the Heat kind of need more reason for cause here, right? Like after having given him a 7-game suspension, like they kind of need more reason for cause to punish him further. Because that was what the suspension was for. I mean, that's what it was for.
Yeah, but players get benched all the time. I mean, DNPCD is, right there in the word itself. It's a coach's decision. Like, just because you're there doesn't mean I have to play you. I don't give a good goddamn how good you are. I don't see why that's an issue. I mean, maybe the Players Association would take umbrage, but I think historically they've only really taken umbrage at players having their money withheld from them. Not, well, you're not playing my guy enough minutes. And I don't think that Jimmy's going to complain at this point. And like, again, we talked about this in context of Terry Rozier, and I'm pretty firmly standing behind this point. Like, Jimmy's not going to do anything over the next week, 2 months, whatever. It's not going to change perception of him around the league. I think everybody knows what he's capable of. But I think everybody also understands that there is an element of, well, we don't know how long he's going to be able to do this. I don't know that he's going to be able to do it consistently. And you kind of hope that he can do it in the playoffs, but that remains to be seen. And I think any team that I'm looking at, Phoenix specifically, is that's willing to take that chance is because, well, they don't believe in who they currently have on their roster, and they see the grass is potentially greener with Jimmy Butler on there. So as far as
Jimmy's gonna warm up with the team, be in that locker room, get dressed with his teammates, come out and not be a part of that starting lineup. And then Erik Spoelstra is going to have to answer questions after the game. Why was Jimmy Butler not in the starting lineup?
Oh, we wanted to commit to the guys that are here, or he was still a little sore, and we didn't. And conditioning.
That's the other option, right? Jimmy might say, "I don't want to risk injury either," and maybe he pulls out general soreness from his Minnesota days, and he's like, "Yeah, I'd love to go, but my hamstring doesn't feel right. After not playing, I'm a little rusty, and I think I'm just a little tight, and I don't think I can go. I'm going to warm up with the intent to play and then not play." Like there's a whole other option of how Jimmy Butler handles this too. It's all awkward. Again, I can't imagine that Jimmy just sits on the bench next to Kevin Love and just stares at his teammates while a game is happening in front of him. And I also have a hard time seeing any of this being good if he's on the court, because it feels like it's just going to be like what it was the previous 2 games prior to the suspension. So this is tough waters, man. Like this is weird, and nobody knows how this is going to play out. That said, coming up, if this does go all the way into the summer, if the Heat are not able to trade him before the trade deadline, the Heat could actually have more options, weird as it sounds. Plus, Jimmy Butler may have finally come to the realization that the rest of us already knew. We'll talk about that next year on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Wayfair. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering and refreshing a space helps you get back into a certain routine and a mindset. Whether you're tidying up, cleaning out, or just want to give your space a new look to start the year, Wayfair has everything you need, all within your budget. If you're looking for furniture, their huge selection makes it easy to find pieces that fit your style and budget. And your favorite part? Well, the free and hassle-free delivery, even for larger items. Wayfair's site is so easy to navigate. You can find everything you need in no time. There's something for every style and every home, no matter your space or budget. So give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. We'll be right back.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. The best way to support the show is to like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. Here's the thing that I think has gone undercovered in some of the Jimmy Butler coverage on Tuesday by saying that he's going to opt into his contract next season, or at least willing to opt into his contract next season in order to help facilitate a trade, obviously. I think Butler's realizing that max money that he hoped would be out there is not out there this summer. We just, like the Brooklyn Nets report earlier this week or last week, whenever that was, I'm getting all my days confused now, about, we're not interested in signing Jimmy. They're the only team with max cap space. There's other teams that can create close to max cap space, the Houston Rockets, teams like that. But it does not seem for now that there's a market for Jimmy Butler either via trade or even as a free agent in terms of that max money that he's looking for. And so this is why I always said, despite the reporting and his representation insisting we're going to opt out and you are risking us leaving for nothing if you don't give us what we want. I said over and over again, dating to the summer, I'll believe that he turns down $52.4 million when I see it, because that is a lot of money to turn down. Even when we talk about a team-friendly extension or getting like $30 million for 3 years, a year from another team, like you having to play 2 seasons to basically make the money that you would make in 1 season, that doesn't make sense for anybody financially.
Right.
So for Jimmy Butler, I think what we're looking at right now is if I were to guess like the most likely outcome, it's that he's not traded before February 6th. Because if that deal isn't out there now, I don't know when that deal is coming. I don't see it on the board. Could be wrong. Things change quickly in the NBA. I could definitely be wrong. But the most likely scenario is that he's on the team after February 6th. The Heat have to navigate whatever this awkward situation is. And then he opts into that $52.4 million, and the Heat are forced to try to find a trade this summer. Now, this summer, it could be a little bit easier to find that deal. There's going to be more teams with cap space, right? You're dealing with your own free agents. You free up some of your own payroll, things like that. You're a little bit more flexible. There could potentially be other deals this summer, especially if there are not that many great deals out there right now. But I think Jimmy has come to that realization, David. Yeah, the money that I wanted, I don't know that that's out there from the Heat nor anybody else at this point in my career.
Yeah, I understand that perspective. I think it's pretty obvious that, and look, and with good reason. Like it's insulting, and I know it's hurtful, and I know, again, we talked about the emotional tie to the idea of wanting to get paid what you feel you deserve. He thought he was going to get that from the team that he had helped carry over the last 5.5 seasons, and unfortunately, it just didn't work out that way. And aside from the $52 million that he's owed this year, should he opt in, there just doesn't seem like there's much of a market to pay him outside of that. But from the Heat perspective, I just keep thinking, take whatever deal you can get and avoid that opt-in. Like things are only going to get worse in terms of whatever trade package you can get. Again, I would want to finalize this as soon as possible. Get Jimmy out of here. And if you're going to take pennies on the dollar, and we're just kind of haggling right now, whether you're taking 9 or 10 pennies on the dollar for what Jimmy was able to provide, and that being the case, you just got to be able to move forward as quickly as possible, because you just cannot have this hovering over the team. It's the players have talked about this. The ones on the road trip, they've talked about the clarity, the understanding. We just got to get away from that chaos. And I know it's only basically a couple of players, and it's not. Again, I don't think that there's any clear tension or animosity between the 14 guys on the roster that are on the road trip and Jimmy Butler. I think there's some friction there because, he kind of sold out the team, and I get that. And they're kind of feeling defensive, and they're kind of stuck in between. Yes, absolutely. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to ask about it. I think from their perspective, they would rather it just be done. It's like, you know what? Oh, best of luck to Jimmy. I loved playing with him for 5 years, etc. That's it. You move on. You have to be able to cut ties with him, and it's not going to get any better. And I think from the report also,
what kind of deals? Go ahead.
Yeah, the report said that they were talking to numerous trade partners, or they had engaged in other trade,
and that they got offers, and that they didn't like any of them, and that they haven't felt motivated. So
get your beer goggles on. It's like your final call at your local watering hole, and that chick by the jukebox.
That might be it. Might be the only option.
That's right.
This is, to me, a leverage play. One last gasp. And this is what everything comes down to at the end of the day, right? This is Jimmy Butler saying, I'm going to opt in, which is your worst case scenario. You better trade me. That's what he's saying in this face. And I'm not signing a long-term deal, even if you offered it. And the Heat are like, well, we were never offering it. And he's like, well, I'm not taking it. It's like, you're fired. Well, I quit. And I was like, we already fired you. It's like, it's sort of like that. But to me, this reads as, well, you know what? It's a little awkward. We know this about Pat Riley. He doesn't care about awkward. And he's not going to be, and you hear this over and over again, he's not going to be bullied into a deal. I do think that the Heat are motivated to find a deal for all those reasons you said. It's not fair to those guys in the locker room for this to be a situation right now. and they want to move forward, but they want to get a deal that they like, and or at least that's palatable. And they also understand that, you know what, we don't have to do anything right now. We have until February 6th. And it does feel like that's really soon, and that might not feel like there's much of a difference between right now and February 6th. And maybe materially there isn't, but as much leverage, fake or real, that you can create. Yeah, I mean, as much leverage as you can create between now and then. If that gets you one extra second-round pick or loosens protections on a first-round pick coming your way from these offers, maybe that's sort of your job as a front office, is to get those things. And so I think that's where we're at, is Pat Riley saying, no, we're only going to do it for how many times? I mean, this is right out of the Danny Ainge playbook. We're only going to move Rudy Gobert for a deal that we really love. And then next thing you know, they're moving Rudy Gobert for a deal that they really love. Like, this is what front offices do. This is the language that you hear all the time, is we're only going to move this player with an offer that knocks our socks off, or whatever it is. And that's sort of what they're expressing right now. And I think it's only because, we have a little bit more room between now and maybe when we feel like those best offers might come right before the deadline. And if it's a little awkward for 3 more weeks, then it's a little awkward for 3 more weeks. But at least in 3 weeks, we know we got the best possible offer available. And that might be it. At least that's my read. That's my read into it.
No, and it makes sense. I don't know how they have to shut down Jimmy, or they'll have to do something. They'll figure it out. I don't know if they contact the league office and say, yeah, we're just not going to play him, or we'd like to suspend him again. We want a little leeway in trying to manage the situation, and something has to change. And I'm trying to think from like those teams that are potentially interested or linked to Jimmy. Do they get a little bit better? Do they get a little bit closer to possible contention and see Jimmy as the one way of saving them? Like right now, the Warriors they're losing games. They're losing a lot of games. Jimmy's not going to save that team, so they're kind of forced out.
They're out here positioning too that they're not going to, like, you heard Steph, Steve Kerr, Draymond Green all talking like, we're not going to mortgage the future to take some sort of last gasp right now. And I do wonder, is that a little bit of a leverage play? Like, all this stuff it's very rarely just what it is, right? Like the words on the page are very rarely just what the words are. It rarely means just the words on the page. So look, we'll see what happens. Whether or not he opts in, opts out, ultimately to be seen here. But there are many twists and turns to come still in the Jimmy Butler saga. But for now, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app.